Out of the stars in their flight, out of the dust of eternity, here have we come. Out of the stars have we come. Out of the sea to the land, up from darkness to light, rising to walk and to fly, out of the sea trembled life. This is the marvel of life, rising to see and to know. Out of your heart cry wonder, sing that we live. This passage by the Reverend Robert Weston poetically and beautifully points toward the message that I want to bring to you today. We know where we come from, and we can recount the story of human origins, and yet we still cry wonder and marvel at the awesome reality of life. As the cover of our order of service reminds us every Sunday, in addition to being genuinely inclusive and joyfully deep, we are a rationally spiritual people. We know and we wonder. We reason and we are moved by forces beyond our reason. When you talk about who you are and where you come from, how do you frame it? Do you talk about human biology, or do you talk about ancestors or family, or a little bit of both? Today's reading, A Passion for Reason by Doug Nutter, challenges us to blend these, reason and spirit, in how we approach the task of making sense of our experiences and making meaning of our lives. A couple weeks ago, Reverend White preached about our identity as a joyfully deep church, suggesting that we need not choose between depth and joy, nor do we have to choose between being rational and being spiritual. The idea that spirituality is non-rational or that the workings of our mind have no connection to matters of the spirit is a false dichotomy. Spirituality is not an otherworldly pursuit. However, the tendency to withdraw from what is in order to pursue a spiritual life is not uncommon. Roman Catholic priest Henry Nouwen, in his book Reaching Out, tells the story of a priest who canceled his subscription to the New York Times because he found that the news of wars and crimes distracted him from his prayer and meditation practice. As Nouwen points out, a real spiritual life does exactly the opposite. It makes us so alert and aware of the world around us that all that is and happens becomes part of our contemplation and meditation and invites us to a free and fearless response. Living a rationally spiritual life means being grounded in our knowledge and understanding and experience of what is, and allowing it to move us to an engaged way of being spiritual in the world. We must not ignore the world that is in search of the world that could be. We have to experience a vision of what the world could be, and this often happens through spiritual experiences of the mystery beyond all our naming. Rational spirituality runs deep in the bones and blood of Unitarian Universalism. From our 19th century religious ancestors who responded to the developing science of the day, to modern religious humanism, we have a tradition of free inquiry and reason in matters of faith. I've often heard Unitarians say that we are the church where you don't have to leave your brain at the door. Now, that statement always strikes me as a bit elitist. We are not the only church that encourages people to use their minds. However, the use of reason to explore and understand the truth and meaning of the world, rather than adherence to a creed, has been a defining characteristic of Unitarian Universalism from the beginning. 19th century Unitarians said that God gave humanity reason so that we could understand right and wrong, so that we could cultivate human goodness, and so that we could understand God and the world. We have a likeness to God, they said, and part of that likeness is our minds. As William Ellery Channing wrote, "The infinite light would be forever hidden from us, did not kindred rays dawn and brighten within us." Channing and others brought this God-given reason to bear in their study of the Bible, and scriptures, which is how they reached the conclusion that God is one, the uni of Unitarian. Today, we continue to value reason as a tool for religious exploration, but we are not our 19th century or pre-19th century ancestors. We also value deeply other sources of truth, including faith, tradition, emotion, experience, and intuition. We believe that these two are just as much sources of truth and wisdom as what we can discern and verify using our minds. Unitarian Universalist rational spirituality today has been deeply influenced by humanism, as we see in our first principle affirming the inherent worth and dignity of every person and our commitment to bettering the lives of all of humanity. Humanism tells us that human life here and now on this earth is important, and that we must take responsibility for it. William Murray, in his book Reason and Reverence, Religious Humanism for the 21st Century, writes that religious humanism, as distinguished from some other forms of humanism, is, quote, open to mystery and more likely to respond with reverence and gratitude at the wonder of being alive. There is a spiritual dimension to religious humanism, which invites us to use the power of our minds while also being humble and reverent. The balance of these two, reason and reverence, he says, helps us to avoid acting like gods. Robert Weston's words, "Out of your heart cry wonder, sing that we live," have taken on even more power for me recently as I care for and witness the growth of my almost 3-month-old twins. Every time I look at them, I am in awe of their existence. The fact that in the span of a year they grew from something invisible to the human eye into wiggling 10-pound human beings is truly amazing. Of course, I know how it happened, and yet still I cry wonder. Similarly, Murray writes in his book, "Although I know more than the ancients did about the universe, the process of reproduction, and the nature of the human body, I am still filled with awe when I gaze at the night sky or at the infant grandchild I hold in my arms, or when I ponder the intricate biology of the human body or incredible structure of the human brain. The more I learn about the world from modern science, the more I am in awe. Knowledge and understanding do not decrease wonder and the sense of mystery in which we live. In fact, they often increase these religious sensibilities or sensitivities." Even the scientific genius Albert Einstein embraced the mystery. He wrote, "The most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. It is the source of all true art and science." And he said, "He to whom this emotion is a stranger, who can no longer pause to wonder and stand wrapped in awe, is as good as dead." So as religious people and as Unitarian Universalists, we believe that faith includes both reason and reverence, that we have both a rational nature and a spiritual nature, and that these are not in conflict. We need both in order to fully tell our story. The story of humanity, the story of each of our lives, and the story of our communities such as this church. I really love the Socratic image that Doug Mutter presents in our reading of reason as the charioteer and passion as the horse. He says, as important as it is for the charioteer to provide direction, without the horse, he's not going anywhere. The horse, representing passion and spirit, is what moves us forward, deepens our lives, and makes them vital and worth living. When we tell the story of the charioteer and of the horse, the decisions and actions as well as the vision towards which we are moving, we get at what moves us and at what might move someone else. So it does matter how we tell our stories. Mutter tells us that he became a Unitarian Universalist when he read the principles and agreed with them, visited a church, and met some cool people at coffee hour. But is that really the full story? It can't be. He had a spiritual experience in worship, listening to a reading from Bertrand Russell. And it wasn't about the content, he said. It was about realizing that there was no us and them, and that Unitarian Universalists gather wisdom from diverse sources. So with this in mind, I wonder, what is the story of how you got here? And of why you stay? Whether this is your first day in church or you've been here for 25 or 50 or more than 50 years, there is a story of how you came to be sitting in these pews today. The sensible story might be something like this. I drove by the church every day or every week. I went to the website and I read about the church, or I looked up Unitarianism at my local library. I visited on a Sunday, drank some coffee and bought a donut from Interweave, and I met some neat people. I came back every Sunday for a few months, and then I filled out some paperwork to join. Then I wrote my name in a book, and the rest is history. Now, perhaps parts of your story are captured by what I just said, but likely there is more to it. What moved you to finally check out the church after passing by it every day or every week? What on the website or in the book spoke to your heart? Did it make an impression that the LGBTQ group was so visible every Sunday in church via the donut table? Who did you meet, and what was the quality of the conversations you had with them? What did you experience in worship that touched your spirit? What moved you to perhaps take the next step and become a member of this church? What did it mean for you to write your name in our book of names and to be blessed? And why do you come back every Sunday, or almost every Sunday? What meaning do you find here, and how does it help you make sense of your life and of the world we live in? And what vision does this church inspire in you? These are the questions of a rationally spiritual life. When we let questions like these shape our story, we find deeper meaning and possibility in what is. For example, we come to an awareness that it's not just that we're surrounded by a lot of people here, but that we're not alone. It's not just that people rationally deserve love and justice, but that we have a role in making love and justice real in our lives and the lives of others. It matters how you tell your story, and it matters how we tell our story as a church. The sensible story of First Unitarian Church of Dallas might begin with some like-minded Unitarians gathering at Temple Emmanuel in 1899. Moving from one building to another, the coming and going of ministerial leadership, and our work for justice in Dallas. But that's not the whole story. What vision did our 32 original members have for their coming together? Their leader, Daniel Limbaugh, articulated it beautifully. He preached these words: "The time has come in the history of Dallas when a broad and liberal Christianity should be declared here. Many souls are hungering and thirsting for religious knowledge, truth, and righteousness. To them, the old dogmas, doctrines, and creeds appear outgrown. These persons are at sea without a chart and compass, and many are making shipwrecks of their religious natures. The old creeds seem to them unworthy of the character of God, the nature of man, and the highest conception of human duty and destiny. We need a liberal platform which does no violence to religion, but which, while perfectly rational, is at the same time expressive of the highest conception of a life of spirituality." Limbaugh was their charioteer, but their horsepower came from their commitment to a rationally spiritual faith. This faith would quench the spiritual thirst of religious liberals and offer a chart and compass for living a good life. Today, as a church, we gather to be a voice for progressive religion in the heart of Dallas. We strive to be, as we say, genuinely inclusive, rationally spiritual, and joyfully deep. We believe that life here and now on this earth is what matters, and so we work for justice. We seek to be evidence of hope and love, so we care for each other and the world. This is the vision, a vision that I know moves me personally, and when we truly live it, will move others as well. I believe that embracing a rationally spiritual faith will actually help us to navigate the challenges of living in this time. We live in a tumultuous period in human history. Some are losing their faith in the goodness of people, and some question whether anything makes sense anymore. The opening words of our reading this morning were, "Where does my unshakable faith in this power of sense-making come from?" He says, "Your faith may rest on solid, reasonable foundations, but mine is rooted in experiences of awe and wonder, and in moments when visions of a world that could be overwhelmed my perception of the world that is." A rationally spiritual faith enables us to see beyond our perception of the world that is to this vision of the world that could be. My hope is that the movements of the mind and the spirit will work together in your life to create an unshakable faith in the power of sense-making, even amidst a world that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense sometimes. I believe that Unitarian Universalism is a religion that can present a wider vision of that world that could be. Not a fantasy, but a faithful vision rooted in knowing where we have come from, informed by reason, and made real through spiritual experiences of awe and wonder at the majesty of life and what is possible for us to do together. May it be so, and may it become so. Amen.